Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today. This week, he said it's been a joy-filled ministry, but one pastor says it's time to step aside. How the Baptist campus ministry led to a lifelong call to reach the unreached, and one text leads to 3 professions of faith. All that coming up, but first, a new feature on Kentucky Today. You may have noticed it. Articles highlighting Baptist history. I talked to the man who writes those columns, pastor and historian Ben Stratton, about why it's important for Kentucky Baptists to know our heritage. First, if you would, tell us about your call to ministry and how you came to become pastor at Farmington.
Okay, so I was saved. I was 12 years old and got involved in church, got more involved, and I surrendered to preach. I was about 15 years old. So I've been preaching since I was 15 and pastoring since I was 20, pastored 2 other churches, Mount Pisgah Baptist Church in Graves County, East Hickman Baptist Church in Fulton County. And I've been here at Farmington since 2008. So yeah, so a little over 17 years.
That's many years of faithfulness. You've been at Farmington a long time. So good for you on leading that church well.
Well, it's went by quick, but it's been a good 7.5 years. The Lord is really blessed, and church is still going really good. They treat me very well, so it's a good church.
So, what sparked your interest in history in general, but Baptist history in particular?
Well, it's an interesting story. I grew up. My roots are kind of Logan, Todd County is where my family's from, and born in Logan County and grew up in neighboring Todd County, but grew up in a very rural area on a farm. There wasn't much to do besides work, play outside. And so I just like to read. So I read a lot. So even at a very early age, 4th, 5th grade, I began to love history in general and still do. I love all sorts of history, world history, American history, everything. And but once I surrendered to preach, I began to get interested in church history and then later in Baptist history. And I've had some professors along the way and preachers who kind of pointed me in the right direction, helped mentor me in that, and told me stories that got me interested. But yeah, just kind of got interested in history because I like to read, and then transitioned to Baptist history.
And what about Baptist history in particular intrigued you?
Well, like I said, you start preaching, you get interested in the Bible, you surrender to preach. I'm very interested in the Bible, biblical history and church history. And then just kind of, you start focusing on your own history, your personal history, the Baptist. So I just kind of narrowed in on that. So I enjoy church history in general, Baptist history in particular. So it's kind of both, but I especially like Baptist history, and there's not a lot of focus on that. So that's why I enjoy talking about it.
Now, the story of Kentucky Baptist began even before the country began. Give us a brief summary of how Baptist work in Kentucky got started.
Yes. So Baptists are in Kentucky by 1776. The first first sermon preached by a Baptist, I think it's in April of 1776 in Harrodsburg by William Hickman. Hickman County is named after his son down here in West Kentucky. But so you've got Baptists in Kentucky very early. There's a lot of people don't realize it, but there's a lot of Baptist persecution in Virginia. So 10 of the first 12 Baptist preachers in Kentucky were from Virginia. So 1760s, 1770s, Baptist preachers, and not just 1 or 2, dozens are being thrown in jail in Virginia, are being beaten up in Virginia, are being fined, are having their heads dunked in water. Y'all talk about baptism. We're going to baptize you and don't drown them, but almost do. So there's a lot of persecution in Virginia. And so a lot of Baptists are, kind of, let's go somewhere new. There's a new opportunity in Kentucky. The land is cheap. The land is fertile. And everything that's going on in the war in the coast. So people that, they're coming to Kentucky for a lot of reasons. reasons, but a lot of Baptists, I think, are just fleeing. It was so difficult for the Baptists in Virginia in the 1760s, 1770s. So they're coming to Kentucky to get away from that.
Why the persecution in Virginia? Was it theological?
Well, the Anglicans, so you had the colonies, they're not states yet. And Virginia was an Anglican colony, a Church of England. So in Virginia, you had to have a license from the state or from the colony to preach. You paid taxes, not just to the colony, but to the Church of England. So a lot of Baptists didn't like that. They didn't like having to pay taxes to the church. They didn't like having to get the church's permission to preach. And so it was actually Virginia Baptists who had a big influence on James Madison to get us the Bill of Rights, and the first Bill of Rights that guarantees religious freedom, religious liberty in America. So yeah, so that kind of ties in. So like I said, a lot of Baptists are coming to Kentucky from Virginia. And again, it's hey, there's good land over there. There's new opportunities, but things were difficult for the Baptists before that. So yeah, you got whole churches, the traveling church picks up from around Spotsville, Virginia, and the whole church moves, in a there and to Kentucky. So it's a lot of that's coming through. First Baptist Church in Kentucky, of course, Severns Valley. That is 1781. Yeah, is so. And within 10 years, you got 50 churches Baptist churches in Kentucky.
So how did the Kentucky Baptist Convention arise from that? It predates even the Southern Baptist Convention, right?
Yeah. So Southern Baptist Convention's 1845. Baptists are pretty quickly organized in associations in Kentucky. So you got the Elkhorn Association, what used to be, I think it's now the Central Kentucky Association, Central Kentucky Network. But they're starting district associations very early. And in the 1830s, you've got some Baptist leaders saying, let's put together some sort of state organization. And they try in 1832 to start a convention, the Kentucky Baptist Convention, but it's not very popular. It just doesn't take off. And so 5 years later, 1837, they start what they call the General Association of Baptists in Kentucky. Sounds a little better. The Baptists already have district associations, local associations. So it sounds a little less bureaucratic, a little less, authoritative. And so they start this General Association, and it takes off, and that later becomes the Kentucky Baptist Convention. Yeah.
Baptists just don't like bureaucracy, do they?
We do not. We do not. Exactly.
Why is it important for Kentucky Baptists to at least be aware of their history, of our history?
Yeah, so I think it's, it's our story. And it's like, everybody needs to know a little bit about their family history. And this is our family history. This is our personal story. So I found a lot of Baptist preachers, they'll know about Jonathan Edwards. They'll know about, John Knox or John Wesley or D.L. Moody or Billy Sunday. They know all these names, but you ask them, who are some famous Baptists? And they can maybe tell you Spurgeon, maybe John Bunyan, and then they're stuck. And just most people can't name it. And there's just a tremendous amount of Baptist history in America, and especially in Kentucky. So it's kind of our story. So I think we need to know it, and we've just forgotten it along the way. And it needs to be passed on from generation to generation so we can learn these things. But it's our personal story. So we need to know about our spiritual forefathers.
So what can we learn from the past that could impact how we do ministry today?
So I'd say kind of positive and negative. So positively, we can get, you study Baptist history and you get all these amazing sermon illustrations, and preachers are always looking for sermon illustrations. And, we can use stories from the Bible and personal stories, but I found when you preach to people, I go preach other places, if you can tell a story about that church or a story about that region, man, people connect with that. And Kentucky Baptists have had just some awesome revivals, the Second Great Awakening, many local revivals, just so many great stories of salvations, testimonies, new churches started. And you learn those things and you can kind of sprinkle them into your sermon. and it really and people enjoy that. It's a great benefit, I think, positively to preachers to include stories from our Kentucky Baptist heritage in our sermons. So there's positive. It helps us, it encourages us, edifies us, instructs us. Negatively, with the negative aspect, as we're seeing so many people, as we've talked about, leave the Baptist. This will help us, because Baptists used to do a really good job of teaching people, doctrinal instruction through Bible institutes and fifth Sunday services, discipleship training. So we read the past and we say, hey, here's what Baptists used to believe. And we see there's all these books and all kinds of resources there. I think it can help us kind of stop some of the leaks we're seeing with people, going away and leaving the Baptist for other denominations. So I think it can encourage and help our preaching with stories and illustrations. And then I think it can also encourage us doctrinally to kind of make us stronger with what we believe by saying, hey, what did the Baptists used to believe? We don't believe that because of tradition or because grandma believed it. We believe it because the Bible teaches it. So, yeah.
As you study Baptist history, what has surprised you most? Anything that you looked at that said, that's surprising?
Well, there's so much more to learn. So that always amazes me. I'm always seeing new fascinating things. It's interesting to see how we're connected, the different regions. There's always interesting connections. There's not as much isolation as you would think between the regions. But the issues today are the same issues in the past in a lot of ways. We saw with COVID, the Baptists dealt with the Spanish flu in 1918. Very similar. We could learn a lot of lessons from that. We did learn a lot of lessons. With problems today, the same problems we see today, we've seen in the past. So that it is, whether it's scandals sometimes we see, that's been around. People don't change. Times change, people don't change. We talk about some of our churches being weak today, but I wrote a story about a revival in Columbus, Kentucky in 1940, great revival. And that church was down to just women and a few children. And, we look around, see a lot of our churches are kind of similar. So just women, maybe a few children, senior adults. So Baptists, we can learn from the past. So it surprises me, the issues today have been around before. And so that's, again, another reason to look to the past. We can learn from what did our forefathers do when they went through these sort of things. So, yeah.
So there's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. Exactly. Amen.
Do you have a favorite historical figure from Baptist history? And if so, why is that person your favorite?
So I have a lot of them, but probably my favorite is down here in West Kentucky's H. Boyce Taylor. He pastored First Baptist Murray there in Callaway County, was pastor of that church from 1898 to 1931, came up with the idea of a budget plan that later becomes the cooperative program. A lot of people miss this at the national level, and people give sometimes M.E. Dodd credit for the cooperative program on the national level in 1925. But Dodd was pastor at First Baptist Paducah, and he got that idea from Boyce Taylor. So it's kind of neat there. So the cooperative, I really like Taylor. So many things. Some of the first Southern Baptist missionaries to go to Peru and Chile came out of Taylor's church. He encouraged people, trained a lot. He started a preacher school, and in the 1920s, there were more people studying for the ministry in Callaway County in West Kentucky than any other place, any other college in the state of Kentucky. It's amazing. He encouraged L.C. Kelly to do the same thing in Pineville, and that's where Clear Creek comes from. So Taylor has a lot of interesting connections. Again, shows that connectiveness, and just a great man, very strong Baptist. So I really enjoy H. Boyce Taylor from down here in West Kentucky. Yeah.
You also helped lead the J.H. Spencer Historical Society. Talk about what that is and who J.H. Spencer was.
Yeah, so J.H. Spencer wrote the first large, complete history of Kentucky Baptist, 1885. It's a 2-volume set. It's been reprinted several times. You can read it online on Google Books, places like that. A very massive set. So if your church is older than 1885, it's probably something about it in that works. Spencer's History of Kentucky Baptist. There used to be a Baptist Historical Society in Kentucky, and it kind of died out. So back in 2008, myself and several pastors, we said, let's restart it. And we named it after Spencer, kind of to give it a fresh start, the J.H. Spencer Historical Society. And it's grown. We have about 200 members, doing really well. We've reprinted a lot of books, done just a lot of good things. So it's going really well. And it's one of the better state Baptist historical societies in the U.S. So yeah, really, really proud of how things are going with it.
How can people get involved in that if they're interested?
Yeah, so the membership is open to anybody. You can find out. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter account. There's a small fee to join, and that just covers postage. And then we reprint it. We publish a journal every year. It's about 50 pages. So the membership fee is very small, but it's just cover postage and the printing of the journal. But we mail out stuff about 4 or 5 times a year. So that's you get your money's worth, definitely, if you're interested in Baptist history. But check out the Facebook page, and you can find out more. Yeah.
Well, the history of Kentucky Baptist ranges from, the good, the bad, and the ugly, of course. But if people want to learn more about Kentucky Baptist history, what do you recommend? Is there a book that you'd recommend people start with?
Okay, so so there's several things. Again, Spencer, if your church is old, Spencer's a great place to look. One good one, and I'll show it to you, is my friend actually did, is see if you can get it up there. The First 50 Baptist Churches in Kentucky by Mickey Winter. So Brother Mickey done just an amazing amount of research. Was a Kentucky Baptist pastor, retired now, and he looks at those first 50 Baptist churches started in the first decade, and looks at their origins. And so it's a great, on those early years, it's a really helpful work. And it was out of print for a long time, and so he just put it back into publication just in the last month. You can pick it up on Amazon in hardback or paperback. So if you're interested in those early days, that'd be the place to go. The First 50 Baptist Churches in Kentucky by Mickey Winter. I really highly recommend that book. Yeah.
Well, we've begun running some of your columns on Baptist history on Kentucky Today to help make people more aware of their history. So we appreciate the work you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have those out there, and hope people find them edifying and encouraging. Yeah. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Yes, sir, Brother Lawrence. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Today, Managing Editor Mark Maynard and Content Editor Chip Hutchison. Hello, guys. Chip, it was kind of your idea to begin running those history columns. Talk about how you found them and your idea to start using them.
Well, I have known Ben for a number of years now, a priest in his church, and have just such great admiration for the work he's done to highlight what the history of Kentucky Baptist. And so I followed that the J. Spencer Historical Society on Facebook, and was intrigued by some of the articles he wrote. He wrote one about a Kentucky Baptist pastor's defense of biblical truth, and really stopped inerrancy in its tracks a couple of centuries ago. Then the one about John Gano, who, if people have seen that photo of a painting of George Washington being baptized, and the story legend has it that John Gano is the one who baptized him. So I had a great interest in it, and I thought, well, surely other people will be interested as well. And so I contacted Ben, and we've been running the articles that he posts. And I just think it's an encouragement to people. I think it was in 1905, there's a famous quote, if we forget history, we're doomed to repeat it. Well, that's a good warning to us. But also, if we forget history, we can forget some of the great successes. And we always have told our children, learn from your mistakes. By looking at Baptist history, we can learn from mistakes, but we can also learn from successes and victories for the cause of Christ. So we certainly hope people enjoy these articles on Kentucky Today. They are those do not need to be lost on our current generation.
And Mark, it's just amazing how embedded Baptist history is in Kentucky history.
Yeah, it is. They certainly tie together, and as you said, really even before Kentucky was a state, we had Baptists here, and we had coming across from Virginia, and I thought that was interesting what he was talking about with them, the persecution that they went through just from preaching the word. And they saw some fertile land in just right next door, and here they come, and that's how it started, and you see where it's at now. But he's a tremendous historian with this. I love historians generally, whatever their area of expertise is, and he's certainly the expert on Kentucky Baptist. But you can almost hear the passion in his voice when he's talking about it. When you were interviewing him, you could hear him. He gets so excited about it. And I think that a good historian does that, and he's a great one. I'm glad we have him.
As we wrap this up, he mentioned Severns Valley, of course, and that's still a prominent church. Severns Valley, the first Baptist church in Kentucky, still a very prominent church. So a lot to learn from history, as I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we move forward from that base. I want to talk about this, not exactly historical, but this is a prominent pastorship that you wrote about, who has been pastor of a prominent church in Kentucky for 15 years or so, and he's your pastor, Tim Bucher, pastor of West Broadway Baptist Church, is retiring.
Yes, he is my pastor, and what an incredible man. He's had an incredible pastorate there at West Broadway. And anytime I say West Broadway, I'm quick to say it's not located on West Broadway in Louisville anymore. It's located on 6 Mile Lane, and church now runs somewhere 175 to 200 people in worship on Sunday mornings, and has done a phenomenal job. He's been at Southern Seminary on the faculty teaching preaching, evangelism. His official role is involved in evangelism there at Southern, teaching those classes. He's been there for, I think, 29 years, and was one of Al Mohler's first hires when he became president at Southern Seminary. But he is retiring. He is not going to leave the Southern position. He's going to remain there. He's been serving for be 15 years in October on a part-time basis at West Broadway, although he is certainly, you wouldn't know it part-time with all the work he's done over the years, but the church is going to move to a full-time senior pastor model, and we'll be voting on a number of things here on Sunday related to that. But certainly a great legacy of faithfulness. Just as a personal note, as someone who gets called on to preach in churches across this state through my role here, he has been a great, without knowing it, really a mentor to me, because I listen to his sermons and I see how there is not one wasted word. And when I'm preparing a sermon, I evaluated if Tim was preaching this, I see what all he would cut out, because he sees me chasing a rabbit. And so I try to use that as kind of a barometer for the effectiveness of a sermon. Of course, obviously the first thing is, Lord, what would you have me to say? But then looking at how I think Tim might approach the text and say, I think Tim would advise me to approach it this particular way.
And quickly, you also wrote about a pastor of a more rural church who's stepping aside from the pulpit, but not retiring from the gospel. Talk about him.
Yeah, Mike Boyd, who is a close personal friend. We've I couldn't count the number of times we played golf together. He was retired fire chief at Fort Campbell, military installation with some 21,000 soldiers on post. He was called to pastor late in life, called to pastor at age 52. He's now 69, and he pastors Mount Zion, which overlooks Lake Barkley in Catawba. And every year it's one of our top 50 per capita giving churches to the cooperative program. And Mike still wants to do interim work, supply work. He had retired from Lebanon Baptist Church, and then Mount Zion had him as an interim, and he was there 18 months, and they just kept pressing him. We think the Lord's called you here, and he got 100% vote to be at Mount Zion. He's been there for 6 years, and he and his wife want to, as you get later in life, you want to make sure you have those best years with your spouse, and they're going to be doing a lot of traveling, but whenever he can, he wants to be in the pulpit.
Indeed. Mark, a couple of stories you wrote about this week. One, a college student involved in Baptist campus ministry through BCM sensed a call to missions, and it turned into a lifelong call for him to reach the unreached. Talk about that story.
Yeah. Of course, we can't mention the college. We can't mention a lot of things about it. It was kind of a mysterious story to write, to be honest. But
for security reasons, we can't mention that.
Yeah, for security reasons is why, yeah. But I think, this young man spent 8 weeks in South Asia, and that's okay to mention that. And he, he came across some real hurdles. I mean, for one, you have the language barrier. He had a translator, but people couldn't read or write. They've never heard of the Bible. And he had to find believers. Now, let me tell you, this region he's in, this bigger, not just where he's in, but generally, has more people than the U.S. and Canada combined. So there's a lot of people, and it's 0.01% evangelical. And his job was to find those evangelicals and teach them how to share the gospel, to spread the gospel, because there's just so much over there, so many unreached people. And, he was able to do some of that and learn, different techniques to do it. But I think it just speaks to our Kentucky Baptist campus ministry that is so strong. He was one of 43 international missionaries that came out of BCM campuses this summer. And there were over 200 that were on, we had a lot of others that were in state as well. But it just shows you what that BCM, how it's growing people, how it's preparing people for ministry, not just on campus, of course on campus, but even beyond. And this young man really found a love for the unreached while he was on campus, and he witnessed to a couple guys from Nepal, and he discipled them, and they both accepted Christ. He was able to baptize them in his home church, and the story just goes on and on with him. But I think him getting a taste of what it was really like to go into these unreached areas has just lit a fire in him. And he said he can't imagine not doing that for the rest of his life. And, he doesn't know what that means at this point, exactly, but he knows whatever he does is going to be dealing with an unreached people group.
It begins on campus, nurtured by a local church, and the impact can be worldwide. Mark, I want to end with this story. It's so interesting how God moved through one text by one man, and it led to 3 professions of faith.
Yeah, it happened at the Northern Kentucky, Hope for Northern Kentucky evangelism training, and it was at Trinity Southern in Falmouth. And, he had 2 or 3 speakers, and the last speaker was actually Jason Hay, who's on our evangelism team at the KBC. And at the end of his presentation, there was like 70 to 80 people there. At the end of his presentation, he said, I want everybody to take their phone out, and I want you to scroll through your contacts. The first person you see who was unsaved, I want you to send them a text right now. So, everybody's you're kind of stunned. I'd never heard of this being done. And Jason said that was the first time he'd actually used it, to as a tool. And of course, people did that, and they waited a few minutes, and that was going to be the last thing they did. And this man raises his hand, and of course, you know how that is. You never know what's going to happen when somebody raises their hand. But he said they called on him, and he said, "Brothers, I just have to tell you something. The person that I texted just texted me back." And, he had said he put his phone down. He didn't, he sent the text saying, "Hey, I'm praying for you." He'd prayed for this lady for years, and I'm praying for you, thinking about you. And, I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I don't know exactly what it was, but something along those lines. He lays his phone down, not expecting anything. And all of a sudden that phone vibrates, and he's like, "What is that?" And he picks it up, and she had answered and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you called. I was sitting here on my knees praying, asking God how I could be a Christian. What do I need to do?" So anyway, he set up a time that he and his wife could go and meet with her at a Waffle House, and they met, and he witnesses to her. She's she'd been through a lot in her life, and she was just hurting and just needed some hope. How interesting, needed hope. And she found that hope, and made a profession of faith. So he's checking out, he's paying his bill, and a waitress comes up to him and says, "Hey, are you Don Gabbard?" That was his name. And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "Did you graduate from Dixie Heights in, whatever year?" And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I did too. I'm so-and-so." And she said, I overheard your conversation with that lady, and she said, "I need hope too." So he led her to the Lord. And then the next day, the woman who had come to faith, the first one, called him and said her mother wants to talk to him. So he's like, "Okay." So he goes and talks to her mother, and she's 85 years old. She accepts the Lord as well. So from one text message, you had 3 people come to salvation, just that simple, and you think, we how often do we use our phones? How often do we text people? But the Lord can use anything. He can use a text message. He can use anything. And we see that this is just a great example of that. And, I would recommend you even trying that. Even today, we could, the guys on this call, we could go through our phone and probably text somebody and just say, "Hey, I'm praying for you. I love you. And, I want you to come to know Jesus." And that's simple. Maybe you get a response, maybe you don't, but I think we have to do what Jesus wants us to do. And I think that would be something that he would want us to do.
I think we'd all agree it's amazing how one act of obedience, God can use that to bless others and Chip as well, to bless us as believers.
Yes, certainly. And it all boils down to obedience. And are we going to be obedient to do and to be sensitive to what the Lord has for us to do? I've heard it said, and I think it's a great prayer every morning. "Lord, give me an opportunity to tell someone about you today. Lord, when you give me the opportunity, help me to recognize it. And then lastly, Lord, then give me the courage to tell that person about you."
Mm-hmm. Good way to end. We can read all those stories that we talked about and more, plus all the latest news on KentuckyToday.com. While you're there, sign up for the morning briefing, our daily news email digest, and for more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and then the cooperative program, which makes this program and much more possible, go to kybaptist.org. Well, Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.